Good day, everyone. My name is Catherine Sipra, the student reporter 38. Today, we will be discussing the DPWH Blue Book item 711 to 715. So this item is under the DPWH Blue Book Part H, which tackles about the miscellaneous structures of the construction. So today, we will be discussing about fence and guardrails, structural metal, treated and untreated timber, water, and geotextile. So let's start. Objectives. It is to provide an insight about other miscellaneous structures requirements like fences, guardrails, usage of water in construction, and geotextiles. To learn and understand the different kinds of war, guardrails, and its usage. To discover and be knowledgeable about the construction and the importance of water. To develop skills in identifying suitable construction materials in engineering. So let's start the item 711, the fence and guardrail. So by definition, the fence is about the structures that encloses the area, typically the outdoors, and is usually constructed from posts that are connected by boards, wire, rails, or netting. And on the other hand, guardrail is a railing guarding against danger, especially a barrier the placed at the edge of a highway at a dangerous point. So it is usually seen at the highways or roads. So the item 711.1, the barbed wire. Galvanized barbed wire of the coating class specified shall conform to the requirements of ASTM-A 121. Aluminum-coated barbed wire shall conform to the requirements of ASTM-A 585 with Type 1 aluminum-coated or Type 2 aluminum alloy barbs at the option of the manufacturers. So under this item, it shall conform to the requirements of ASTM or the American Society of Testing Materials. So on the picture, that is an example of a barbed wire. The item 711.2, the woven wire. Galvanized woven wire fence of a coating class specified shall conform to the requirements of ASTM-A 116. Aluminum-coated woven wire fence shall conform to the requirements of ASTM-A 584. So on the right side of the slide, that is the woven wire. So this chain link fence. Chain link fabric and the required fittings and hardware shall conform to AASHTO M181 for the kind of metal, coating, size of wire, and mesh specified. Galvanized coil spring steel tension wire shall be 7 or 0.177-inch gauge conforming to ASTM A641 hard temper with class 3 coating unless otherwise specified or shown in the drawings. Aluminized coil springs tension wire shall also be 7 or 0.77-inch gauge hard temper having a minimum coating mass of 0.12 kg per meter squared or 0.40 ounce per foot squared of aluminum. So the aluminized coil springs steel tension wire, so man siya sa picture kanang naga-lock or naga-hold sa ato ang wires. The metal beam rail. So steel rail element shall be corrugated steel sheet conforming to the requirements of AASHTO N 180 of the designated class and type. So this metal beam rail is also shown on the slide. It is a corrugated sheet. And the timber rails. Timber rail are rail made of timber. So the timber rail shall be cut from the specified grade of dry, well-seasoned, dressed, and timber stock of the species specified, which shall meet the applicable requirements of AASHTO M168. Where preservative treatment is specified, these shall conform to the requirements in Section 713.3. Rustic rails shall be straight, sound, and free of injurious defect and shall have been cut from live trees not less than 30 days but not more than 1 year before use. They shall have been stripped of bark before seasoning or shall have been stored under water. So the timber that would be used will be treated. So treated and untreated timber will be discussed later on. Immediately before the logs are used in the work, all mats and projections shall be trimmed smooth, and if water cured, all bark shall be peeled. Slight curvature of wind to give a pleasing appearance to the structure will be permitted. Logs of only one species shall be used in construction of any one continuous length of guardrail. So, isa lang siyang klase nga timber ang gamiton sa isa ka continuous in guardrail. So, in the picture, there's an example of a guardrail on a concrete post or a concrete blocks. So the fence post. Wood posts shall conform to the details and dimensions indicated in the plans. All wood posts shall be sound, seasoned wood, peeled and with and cut square as indicated. The posts shall be straight and all knots trimmed flush with surface where treated posts are called for. The kind and type of treatment shall conform to that indicated in the plans. When red cedar posts a bracing is furnished, the requirements for peeling may be omitted. So there are many kinds of posts, the circular ones and the rectangular ones. So kung say specified sa plano mo to ang sundon. So it should be treated and and fully furnished. So all dimensions, timber, and lumber required for fences or gates shall be sound, straight, and reasonably free from knots, splits, and shakes. It shall be of the species and grades indicated in the plans, and shall be dressed and finished on four sides. Concrete posts shall be made of concrete conforming to the specified requirements of concrete. For the class specified, it shall contain steel reinforcement as shown in the plans. Conforming to the requirements of item 710, reinforcing steel and wire rope, steel posts for line-type fencing shall conform to ASTM A702. So there are also concrete posts which is usually used nowadays because it is much durable and can withstand any weather. So it shall also be according to the plans of the engineers. And steel posts, there are also steel posts that shall be galvanized in accordance with the AASHTO M111, except the tubular steel post shall be galvanized in accordance with ASTM A120. Fittings, hardware, and other appurtenances not specifically covered by the plans and specifications shall be galvanized in accordance with ASTM A120 and shall be standard commercial grade and in accordance with current standard practice. So weathering steel posts conforming to the requirements of ASTM A558 shall be furnished when specified. Aluminum alloy posts shall conform to the requirements of AASHTO M181. Then the guardrail posts. Guardrail posts, so katong ginakabitan sa ato ang mga guardrail. So as shown in the on the right side of the slide. So guardrail posts shall conform to the applicable standards contained in AASHTO AGC, ARTBA, or a guide to standardized highway barrier rail hardware. So, nailay-lahing klase nga guardrail post, depende sa nakaspecified sa plano. It's either be timber or the steel. Then the guardrail hardware. Guardrail hardware shall conform to the applicable standards contained in the AASHTO AGC, ARTBA, or the Guide to Standardized Highway Barrier Rail Hardware. So, ang hardware, muna siya itong mga screws, yung gina-attach siya itong guardrail post, hindi attach siya ito ang guardrail. Then, the 711.1, the box beam rail. So, there are also a box beam nga rail na ginagamit. So, lahi sa itong usually nga ito makita, which in the past slides nga kwan lang siya, flat lang siya. So, kani siya, naka-box siya. So, steel box rail element shall conform to the applicable standards contained in the AASHTO, AGC, ARTBA, or Guide to the Standardized Highway Barrier Rail Hardware. And then next is item 712, which is a structural metal. So structural steel is very rampant in the construction industry nowadays because of the advantages of the steel in the construction. So the structural steels. Steel shall be furnished according to the following specifications unless otherwise specified. Structural carbon rivet steel shall be furnished. So tanang gamitin ng structural steel kay naka-furnish. And then, ang gamiton nimo kay katulad yung naka-specified sa plano by the engineer. Then item 712.1.2, the carbon steel. Unless otherwise specified, structural carbon steel for riveted, bolted, or welded construction shall conform to the structural steel ash to M183. The I-bars. Steel for I-bars shall be of a weldable grade. This grade includes structural steel conforming to structural steel ash to M183, highway strength low alloy structural steel with 344.5 MPa, the minimum yield point at 10 mm thick, and the ash to M222 with supplementary requirement SI of ash to M222 mandatory. And then the 7 and 12.1.3, the high strength low alloy structural steel. So it shall also conform to the high strength low alloy columbium vanadium steels of structural quality, or the Astro M223 high strength low alloy structural steel with 344.5 MPa or 50,000 psi, minimum yield point to 100 mm or 4 inches thick, and the Astro M222. Next item is about high-strength low-alloy structural steel for welding. So it shall also conform to high-strength low-columbium vanadium steels of structural grade 50 Ashta M223, and the high-strength low-alloy structural steel with 344.5 MPa, minimum yield point to 100 mm thick Ashta M222, which is mandatory. So next is the high-strength structural steel for riveted or bolted construction. It shall conform to high-strength low-alloy vanadium steel of structural quality and ASHA M223, and the same with the high-strength low-alloy structural steel with 344.5 MPa and yield point to 100 mm thick. Then, high-yield strength quenched and tempered alloy steel plate. It shall also conform to the high-yield strength quenched and tempered alloy steel plate suitable for welding, high-strength alloy steel plates quenched and tempered for pressure vessels, and C is quenched and tempered alloy steel structural shapes, and C meets mechanical tubing meeting all the mechanical and chemical requirements of A51 514-A 517 steel, except that the specified maximum tensile strength will be 964.6 MPa for structural shapes and 999.05 MPa for seamless mechanical tubing. And then the structural rivet steel. So structural rivet steel as shown in the picture, it shall conform to steel structural rivets are ASHTO M228 and grade 1 ASTM A502 grade 1. And the high strength structural rivet steel, it shall conform to steel structural rivets ASHTO M228 and grade 2. And then the high strength bolts. So ang mga bolts po nakaspecified po dire. Bolts, nuts, circular washers shall conform to high-strength bolts for structural steel joints, including suitable nuts and planed hardened washer. ASHTO M164, high-strength bolts for structural steel joints, including suitable nuts and planed hardened washers shall conform to either ASHTO M164 or ASHTO M253. When M164 Type 3 bolts are specified, they, along with suitable nuts and washers, shall have an atmospheric corrosion resistance approximately 2 times that of carbon steel with copper. Bolts and nuts manufactured to ASHTO M164 are identified by proper marking as specified on the top of the bolt heads and on the face of the nuts for 3 different types. Bolts manufactured to ASHTO M253 shall be identified by marking on the top of the head with the symbol A490, and the nut shall be marked on the fence with the legend 2H or DH. Bolt and nut dimensions shall be conformed to the dimension shown in table, as I will show later, and to the requirements for heavy hexagon structural bolts and for heavy semi-finished hexagon nuts given in ANSI standard B18.2.1 and B18.2.2 respectively. So nana siya dito ang mga specifications. The circular washers shall be flat and smooth, and their nominal dimension shall conform to the dimensions given in Table 72.2, except that for lock pin and collar fasteners, flat washers need not be used unless slotted or oversized holes are specified. So, beveled washers for American Standard beams and channels or other sloping faces shall be required and shall be square or rectangular shape shelf paper in thickness and shall conform to the dimensions given in the table. When necessary, washer may be clipped on one side to a point not closer to 0.875 or the 7/8 of the bolt diameter from the center of the washer. Other fasteners assembles which meet the manufacturing materials and chemical composition requirements of H2M164 or H2M253 and which meet the mechanical property requirements of the same specifications in full-size tests which have body diameter and bearing areas under the head and neck or other equivalent not less than those provided by a bolt and not of the same nominal dimensions prescribed in the previous paragraph may be used. Subject to the approval of the engineer, high-strength steel lock pin and collar fasteners may be used as an alternate for high-strength bolts or rivets as shown in the plans. The shank and head of the high-strength steel lock pin and collar fasteners shall meet the requirements of the preceding paragraph. Each fastener shall provide a solid shank body of sufficient diameter to provide tensile and shear strength equivalent to or greater than the bolt or rivet specified, shall have a cold forged head on one end of each type and dimensions is approved by the engineer. A shank length suitable for material thickness, fasten locking groove, breakneck groove, and pull grooves are all annular grooves on the opposite end. So, as specified on the plans mo to sundon and mag-base lang ka sa ASH to M253 or ASH to M164. So, ang lastly, each fastener shall provide a steel locking collar of proper size for shank diameter used by which means of suitable installation tools is cold swelled or into the locking grooves, forming a head for the groove end of the fastener after pulling the groove section has been removed. The steel of locking collar shall be standard product of an established manufacturer of lock pin and collar fasteners as approved by the engineer. So the picture is an example of a lock pin collar and lock pin and collar fastener. So the item 712.1.10, the copper bearing steels. So when copper bearing steel is specified, the steel shall contain not less than 0.2% of copper. So di siya mubaba sa 0.2 ang copper niya. So ang picture man siya example sa mga copper bearing steels. And for forging, steel forging shall conform to the specifications for steel forgings, carbon and alloy for general industrial use. So forging is muna siya ang sa example sa picture, muna ang forging. Then item 712.3, pins and rulers. So pins and rulers more than 2 to 8.6 mm or 9 inches in diameter shall be angled carbon steel forgings conforming to the H2M102 Class C1. Pins and rulers 2 to 8.6 mm or 9 inches or less in diameter shall be angled carbon steel forgings conforming to H2M102. Class C1 or cold finished carbon steel shafting conforming to ASHA M169, grade 1016 to 1030, inclusive with a minimum Rockwell scale B hardness of 85. The material not meeting the specification for hardness may be accepted provided it develops a tensile strength of 482.3 MPa or 70,000 psi and the yield point of 248.4 MPa. So, ang dili kapasar sa specification nga gi-state sa ASHTO M169 kay ma-accept siya provided nga iyahang tensile strength paabot og 70,000 psi ug iyang yield point iya na sa 36,000 psi. So, man siya ang Table 712.1 for nominal bolt and nut dimensions. Itong di-discuss na ko ganina or rather read na ko ganina. So, naka-specify dira yung bolt size which is naka mm o naka-inch. Iyahang width sa head across flats, iyang height sa head, ang thread length, width across flats o ang height niya. So, nana siya dira tanan sa table. So, muni po ang table 712.2 denominal washer dimensions. So, naka-specify nila ang naka-differentiate ang circular washer o ang square or rectangular beveled washers for American Standard beams and channels. So, nakita na dira ang dimensions niya, nominal outside and inside, the diameter hole, and thickness niya, ang minimum o maximums. So, ang dimensions niya naka-mm or inches, may be exceeded by 6 mm or 1/4 inch, and that's all. So let's go to 712.4, the castings. So or castings are manufacturing process in which the liquid material is usually poured into a mold which contains a hollow of a desired shape. So as you can see in the picture, the pour siya sa isa ka mold kay para kuan siya, kung sa yung desired niya shape. So the casting shall conform to the requirements following specifications: steel castings for highway, bridges, ASHTO M192, Class 70 shall be furnished unless otherwise specified, and the chromium alloy steel casting or ASHTO M163, grade CA15 shall be furnished unless otherwise specified. So, naka-specify rin na siya dito sa plano, susundin lang ninyo sa plano para. Then the gray iron casting dash to M105 class number 30 shall be furnished unless otherwise specified. Iron castings shall be true to pattern in form and dimensions free from pouring faults, sponginess, cracks, blow holes, and other defects in position affecting the strength and value for the service intended. Casting shall be boldly filleted at angles and the rises shall be sharp and perfect. So, dapat siya nakasunod sa pagcasting ninyo, dapat nakasunod siya sa dimensions, then free from folds, then sponginess, mga kwantuan, mga cracks, mga holes, o mga other na defects. And then for the item 712.5, the steel grid floors. So, muna siyang example sa steel grid floors. So, all steel grid floors shall conform to the requirements of ASHTO M183 or ASHTO M222. Steel grid floors can be weathering steel, galvanized, or painted. Unless the floors are of weathering steel or galvanized, the material shall have a minimum copper content of 0.2% unless painting of floors is specified in the special provisions. Open type floor shall be galvanized. So, dapat siya, dili siya mutaas sa 0.2% ang imong copper para dili siya dali mataya. Or unless nga naka-specify nga, butangan siya og pintura. The item 712.6 steel pipe, which shall conform to the requirements of ASTM A53, ASTM A120, ASHTO M222, and ASTM A618 as shown in the plans under special provisions. Standard weight pipe shall be furnished unless otherwise shown in the plans or the special provisions. And the 712.7, the galvanized metal. When galvanized structural steel shapes, plates, bars, and their products are specified, they shall be galvanized in accordance with the requirements of ASHTO M191. Next is the sheet lead. So, muna siyang sheet lead. It shall conform to the requirements of ASTM B29 for common desulfurized lead. The sheets shall be uniform thickness and shall be free from cracks, seams, levers, scale, and other defects. Unless otherwise specified, lead sheets shall be 3.8 mm in thickness with a permissible tolerance of 0.75 mm plus or minus. The next is the welded stud shear connectors. So, muna siyang welded stud shear connectors. It shall conform to the requirements of ASHTO M169 for cold finish carbon steel bars and shafting. Cold drawn bar, grades 1015, 1018, or 1020, either semi-skilled or fully skilled. So if flux retaining cups are used, the steel for the cup shall be of low carbon grade suitable for welding and should comply with the ASTM A109 for cold rolled carbon steel strip. The tensile properties as determined by test of bar stock After drawing ore, a finished stud should conform to the following requirements. So, muna siya ang requirements. If ang tensile strength niya, dapat ang minimum lang niya ay 413.4 MPa or 60,000 PSI. Then, ang yield strength niya kay ang minimum kay 345 or 5 MPa or 50,000 PSI or as determined by 0.2% offset method. Then the elongation must be minimum to 20% in 50 mm or 2 inches, and the reduction in area must be minimum to 50%. The tensile properties shall be determined in accordance with applicable section of ASTM A370 for mechanical testing of steel products. In fracture occurs outside the middle half the gauge length, the test shall be repeated. Finished studs shall be of uniform quality and conditions, free from injurious laps, fins, seams, cracks, twists, bends, or other defects, and the finish shall be produced by cold drawing, cold rolling, or machining. So, under sa imuhang tensile test, if nag-break siya or nag-fracture na siya outside the middle half, so usabon nimo siya og test. The stud shall conform to the dimensions given in the table below. The contractor shall furnish the manufacturer's certification that the studs as delivered are in accordance with the material requirements of this item. Certified copies of in-plant quality control test reports shall be furnished to the engineer upon request. So, mo siya ang table. Welded stud shear connector standard dimensions and tolerances niya. If naka-shank siya, if iyang shank o head. So, ang diameter naka-specified, iyang length, and then sa head po naka-specify ang diameter, iyang thickness. So, the length includes thickness of head. Standard length is 101.6 mm or 4 inches, but other lengths may be obtained by special orders. So, muna isa ka advantages sa steel if ganito nimo ka, pwede nimo siya specify ang imuhang order. Special order ka. So next is the item 713 or the treated and untreated timber. So familiar man ta sa treated o untreated timber, no? So untreated timber mo na siya katong closest you will get from a natural wood. So pag cut nimo sa wood, so kung unsa to iyahang structure, kung unsa to iyahang properties mo na jud to. Well, the treated timber are infused with chemicals to resist deterioration due to the weather and the insects. So, in the picture, the right side is the treated timber. As you can see, ay kung anong siya kaayo, gaspang, tapos medyo na siya ang bag-o nga pag-cut sa wood or sa timber. While on the left side is a example of treated timber. So, ang iha lang dyan kalahian, kay iyahang kalahian ni dyan niya kay depende lang dyan sa iyang durability. So, kay usahay ang treated timber kay mas durable siya kay gibutangan naman siya chemicals para maka-withstand sa weather and sa mga insects. So, well, ang untreated timber, so as if lang din na siya. So the general requirements, it shall be of the species specified in the plans unless otherwise noted in the plans or in the special provisions, only the best grade shall be used. So, naka-specified sa plan ang inyong so doon, it shall be free from loose, knots, slits, worn holes, decay, warp, ring separation, or any defects which will impair its strength or render it unfit for its intended use. So, dapat imong piliun nga mga timber, katong yung walay defect kay para dili siya maka-apekto sa imuhang project o sa imuhang paggamitan niya. Sa item 713.1.2, the paints. So when painting of timber is required, the paint shall conform to the requirements of item 709 paints. So na-discuss naman niyo sa past reporter about paint. So dili na kami siya discuss. Sa item 713.1.3, preservatives. So it shall be creosote oil or creosote petroleum oil blend as called for in the plans or by the special provisions and shall conform to the specifications for timber preservative of AASHTO M133. When timber is intended for marine use, the creosote petroleum oil blend shall not be used. Then for the untreated structural timber and lumber. Structural timber, lumber, and piling shall conform to the applicable requirements of ASHA M168 or equivalent. No box arch pieces of the sphere or redwood shall be used in outside stringers, floor beams, caps, posts, seals, or rail posts. Box heart pieces are defined as timbers so sewed at any point in the length of a sewed piece, the teeth lies and carried inside the four faces. Yard lumber shall be of the kinds and grade called for the plans, and the round pole and post shall be of the kinds indicated in the plans. For the treated timber, structural timber lumber and piling to be treated shall conform to the applicable requirements of ASHA M168 and 1DT of the equivalent. The type of treatment to be used will be shown in the plans or in the special provisions and shall conform to the applicable requirements of AWPA Standard C1 and C14 or equivalent. Then we go to the item 714, water. The description. This item covers criteria for acceptance of questionable water, either natural or wash water for use in concrete. So, ang water nga gina-use ato ang concrete mix kay naka-specified po dito sa ato ang Dpwh Bluebook under the item 714. So, 714.1, the requirements. The mixing water shall be clear and apparently clean. If it contains quantities or substances that discolor it or make it smell or taste unusual or objectionable or cause suspicion, it shall not be used unless service records of concrete made with it indicated that it is not injurious to the quality, shall be subject to the acceptance criteria as shown in the table or as designated by the purchaser. So, bisag i-mix gihapon na siya nimo sa concrete, dapat wala gihapon na siya yung um, mga quantities na or mga substances na maka mahimo siyang lubog or na naa siya baho or na siya mga maka-cause siya ng suspicion sa water kay it's either maka-affect na siya sa imuhang structure. When wash water is permitted, the producer will provide satisfactory proof or data of non-detrimental effects of potentially reactive aggregates are to be used. Use of wash water will be discontinued if undesirable reactions with admixtures or aggregates occur. When wash water reuse as mixing water in concrete may exceed the listed concentrations of sulfate if it can be shown that the concentration calculated in the total mixing water, including the mixing water and the aggregate and other sources, does not exceed the stated limit. So, if ang imuhang gigamit na tubig, kay di ba kasagaran sa Dpwh man jud. So, if ang imong ginagamit na tubig kay kailangan na siya i-approve, then maghatag ka og proof na pwede siya magamit sa imuhang pagsagol sa mga aggregates or mga admixtures kay if na mga desirable reactions nga mag-occur, so kailangan to siya ang bangon na paggamit sa imuhang tubig. So muna siya, the table below is table 714.1, which is the acceptance criteria for questionable water supply. So indicate nila ang compressive strength, minimum percent, control at 7 days, the time of setting deviation, time of setting, Gilmore test, initial, final set, appearance, color, odor, total solids, and pH value. So if makapasay mo ang tubig, wash water, so mo na siya mahang gamitin na tubig. And the 714.2, the chemical limitation for wash water. So, nakakuha na nila sa table, makita na natin. And lastly, the item 715, which is the geotextiles. So, geotextiles are the permeable fabrics when used in association with soil that has an ability to separate, filter, or reinforce or protect or drain. So it is usually used to increase soil stability, provide erosion control, and to aid in the drainage. So simply, it is geotextiles is a fabric in the ground. So fabric siyang ginabutang sa ground which helps the erosion, soil stability, o maka-aid siya sa inyong drainage. So the description, this item covers geotextile fabrics for use in subsurface drainage, hydraulic filter, erosion control, sediment control, pavement structures as a waterproofing and stress relieving membrane, and as permeable separator to prevent mixing of dissimilar materials such as foundation and select fill materials. So, as I said earlier, for sediment control, pavement structures, pwede po siya mahimong filter para ma-deselect to nimo or ma-filterize to nimo mga materials na imong isabol sa imong mixture. So physical and chemical requirements, and po siya mga physical and chemical requirements. The fibers used and the threads used in joining geotextiles by sewing shall consist of long-chain synthetic polymers composed of at least 85% of mass polyolefins, polyesters, or polyamides. They shall be formed into a network such that the filaments or yarns retain dimensional stability relative to each other, including cell edges. This material shall conform to the physical requirements of Table 1 for the indicated application. Then the sampling and testing. So the gel textiles also undergoes the sampling and testing. So the product shall be subjected to sampling and testing, and the sampling shall be done in accordance with ASTM V 4352 54, and testing procedures shall be in accordance with the methods given in Table 1. And then next is the certification. So after nimo siya i-test, so dapat na po siya i-certificate para ma-ibalaan sa imuhang para maibalaan sa imuhang contractor or ang engineer nga kanang suitable siya nga gamiton. So the manufacturer shall file with the purchaser a certificate stating the name of the manufacturer, the chemical composition of the filaments or yarns, and the other pertinent information so as to fully describe the their textile. The manufacturer shall include in the certificate a guarantee stating that the geotextile that is furnished meets the requirements of the specifications. The certificate shall be attested to by a person having legal authority to bind the company. So either mismarking or misrepresentation by the manufacturer shall be reason to discontinue acceptance under these specifications. Notice to the manufacturer by the purchaser regarding the discontinuance of acceptance will be considered to be noticed to all wholesalers, jobbers, distributors, agents, and other intermediaries handling the manufacturer's products. So that's it. So dapat yun naka-specify ang inyong mga information sa certificate, and then if na ay misrepresentation nga gibutang dito, so i-discontinue to nga mapaggamit, and then the notice by the notice to the manufacturer by the purchaser regarding the continuous of the acceptance para i-notice po to siya sa mga wholesalers, sa mga distributors at mga manufacturer. And then the quality control. The geotextile manufacturer is responsible for establishing and maintaining a quality control program so as to assure compliance with the requirements of the specification. And the shipment and storage. During periods of shipment and storage, the fabric shall be protected from direct sunlight. So, dili siya ipakuanan dyan sa sunlight. Ultraviolet rays, temperatures greater than 600 degrees or 1,400 Fahrenheit, mud, dust, and debris. To the extent possible, the fabric shall be maintained wrapped in a heavy-duty protective covering, and each shipping document shall include a notation certifying that the geotextile is in accordance with the manufacturer certificate and guarantee previously filed with the purchaser. So aside sa imong certificate of manufacturer certificate, dapat sa pag-travel na kay shipping document nga na dito ang imong notation nga naka-certify kato nga geotextile kay na dito naka according dito siya sa manufacturer certificate. So daghan pa siya mga hotel no. Then the shipping and storage, this product marking label, the fabric and its container, and the manufacturing name, fabric type or trade name, lot number, and quantity. So manay dapat nakabutang dito sa inyong shipping document. Ang product marking label, the manufacturer's name, fabric type, trade name, lot number, and quantity. And then the separation geotextile. So in this item, the geotextile shall be unrolled as smoothly as possible on the prepared subgrade in the direction of the construction traffic. Adjacent geotextile rolls shall be overlapped in the direction of subbase placement using the guidance in Table 3. Sewing is recommended where subgrade cells have a CBR value less than 1. The geotextile may be held in a place prior to subbase placement by pins, staples, or piles of fill or rock. So, after naabutan nimo, so pag-install na nimo siya, ilatag na dayon to nimo siya kung asa to nimo siya ibutang. So, either butangan to nimo siya ka ng pins, staples sa nimo siya dito sa subbase, or butangan nimo siya o rock. The drainage geotextile. So in the trenches, after placing the backfill material, the geotextile shall be folded over the top of the filter material to produce a minimum overlap of 12 inches for trenches greater than 12 inches wide. In trenches less than 12 inches in width, the overlap shall be equal to the width of the trench. The geotextile shall then be covered with the subsequent course. Successive sheets of geotextile shall be overlapped a minimum of 12 inches in the direction of the flow. Then in erosion control, the geotextile shall be placed and anchored on a smooth, graded surface approved by the engineer. So for erosion siya, dito siya sa kilid sa imuhang sa road wherein the erosion happens. So the geotextile shall be placed in such a manner that placement of the overlying materials will not excessively stretch or tear the fabric. Anchoring of the terminal ends of the geotextile shall be accomplished through the use of key trenches or aprons at the crest and two of slope. In certain applications, napod to siya mga certain applications dapat 18 inches long ang anchoring pins niya, placed 2 to 6 feet in centers depending sa slope nimo nga butangan nimo. And then the silt fence. Fence constructions shall be adequate to handle stress from sediment loading. Geotextile at the bottom of the fence shall be buried a minimum of 6 inches in a trench so that no flow can pass under the barrier. So, ginabutang po siya sa inyong mga fence, under dito sa inyong fence para ang walay mo flow dito sa inyong barrier. So the trench shall be backfilled and the soil compacted over the geotextile. So ibalik ko nimo yung soil nga hindi ko tapos i-compact siya. Ilugong to nimo tayo mga geotextile. Then the fence height shall be specified by the engineer but in no case shall exceed 36 inches above ground surface. So if wala siya naka-specified, dapat ang imuhang fence height kay dili siya mag-exceed of 36 inches above the ground. And the geotextile shall be spliced together only at a support post with a minimum of 6 inches overlap. And the paving fabric. The fabric shall be placed into the asphalt sealant with minimum wrinkling prior to the time the asphalt has cooled and lost stackiness. As directed by the engineer, wrinklers or folds in excess of 1 inch shall be slit and laid flat. Brooming and other pneumatic cooling will be required to maximize fabric contact with the pavement surface. Overlap of the fabric joint shall be sufficient to ensure full closure of the joint but should not exceed 6 inches. Transverse joints shall be lapped in the direction of paving to prevent edge pick-up by the paver. A second application of asphalt sealant to fabric overlaps will be required of the judgment of the engineer. So, nagdepending judge siya sa judgment sa engineer. So, hydraulic filter. So, undergapon siya sa installation sa atong geotextile. It shall be laid on lengthwise down slopes and appropriately anchored along the top edge. So, ilatag yun nimo siya naka-lengthwise o muhang pinan or anchored nimo siya dito sa taas. And then the overlap shall be sufficient to prevent parting of flaps during the initial construction or flow stage. And alternatively, the geotextile shall be sewn using a double-stitch portable sewing machine and appropriate thread. So, tahion mo na dito. Then lastly, the method of measurement. So the method of measurement of the geotextiles is indicated in this item 7.81, 7.8.1 to 7.8. 715.8.4. So the geotextile shall be measured by the number of square meters from the pavement line shown in the plans, and the temporary silt fence will be measured in linear meter, and the removed sediment will be measured by the cubic meter, and the excavation, backfill, bedding, and cover material are separate pay items. So, nakaseparate tong backfilling, excavation, bedding. So, ang kuan lang nga by linear meter, by cubic meter, by square meters, kaya to geotextile nimo, temporary silt fence, o ang ditanggal yung mga sediments. So that's all. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned something. And for questions, violent reactions, um, additional informations, you can comment down below. So thank you for listening. That's all.